having that light glowing in the dark, I could hear the voices talking. And then I felt this ice cold temperature just press on my left shoulder. And now I was like panicking in my little 6.5-year-old body. And so eventually I took down the covers and I peeked. And there he was. Spirits, entities, fairies, dragons. They're real.
Welcome to Beyond the Veil, stories of twin flames, divine union, and mystical encounters. Sit back, relax, and listen to your story today. Our next guest is Brittany Lee. She is an energy facilitator that brings people into their own light. She also is an amazing facialist. She's my facialist, and I have transcendent experiences every time I go do that. So she infuses her energy work with that kind of work. And she's also a Reiki master and teacher. And so, hi, Brittany.
Hi, Kimber. So grateful to be here and just honored to be able to share my story with you and those who feel called to listen.
I love that. Amazing. I can't wait to hear your story. So just go ahead and launch into it. If I have any questions during, I'll launch in, but otherwise I'll wait until you're done and then we'll have a dialogue.
Perfect. So this story is about the consciousness, the reopening and reawakening of consciousness and falling back to truth and reopening that truth of how light we are. I believe fully and within my spirit, my soul, from this experience, that we are all born into this life with this stream of consciousness, and for everyone it's different how quickly we become conditioned, and for that part of our consciousness to fall asleep. And for many of us, like me, this part is so loud that it is hard to ignore. And this line, this stream of consciousness that I'm speaking of, is the awareness of different planes, different timelines, different dimensions. And within that awareness, spirits, entities, fairies, dragons, they're real. And so from childhood, from very, very young, I was extremely sensitive. And I would enter a space and could just notice the energy, whether it be so magical, the sunlight coming in, there'd be sparkles and rainbows and I'd be filled with joy, or I'd come around a corner and notice this energy hiding in the corner, right? So whatever the emotion was, whatever the feeling was, I could see it and I could sense it, and maybe I didn't know how to put words to it. It was there. And so having this sensitivity, I was easily afraid. I was afraid of the unknown. I was afraid of so many things because I noticed how I might be alone with what I'm experiencing. Because when I would express myself, the conditioning, the people around me, my parents, oh, you're fine, that's not real, it's okay, calm down, it's okay. And they were right. I mean, I was okay. I was safe. They were right about that. However, there was something, though. There was something. And that's the piece that they were missing, that maybe they had fallen asleep to. And so scary movies, anything with monster tales, extraterrestrials, these type of things, I was so sensitive to. And there was a piece of me that was so intrigued and wanted to explore this, but ultimately I really couldn't participate because it would stay with me for weeks and it would become so real in my mind and play out when I would go to bed. And my father, who was a lot more gentle and a lot more sensitive to this, would try to be more creative and force me to watch. For example, E.T. was a big one, and E.T. is a friendly alien, right? And it wasn't E.T. that scared me. I remember watching and being so afraid, but I would always peek over the blanket when E.T., when the alien scene was there and I could see him. And I would watch him, and it wasn't him I was afraid of. I realize now from my perception, being an adult, it was how entertaining this was for everyone around me, that it wasn't real, that this was funny, it was intriguing, it was fantasy to them, but how I knew that it was truth. And so it wasn't entertaining to me, this was real. And what bothered me was, what made me fearful was their asleepness, I suppose, the asleepness of how this was just entertaining. And so naturally, being this sensitive and having all these fears of the unknown and having these things now that I felt afraid to express, I wanted to sleep with a nightlight. And now I am from the oldest part of the United States, and East Coast, New Hampshire, there's a lot of different types of energy there. So naturally this makes a perfect space for someone like me, energy like me, to be picking up on so many things that we couldn't even really touch on all the details, right? And so I wanted to sleep with a nightlight, and for some reason that having that light glowing in the dark, I could hear the voices talking, and I could feel and see the dark energies standing and peering out of my closet. But they could not walk into this barrier of light where it extended beyond and room. And so that made me feel safe, it made me feel calm. And I remember even watching at my dad's house. My parents were divorced, but at my dad's house he would light the candles instead of a nightlight that plugged into the wall, and the flame would dance and spin, and there was no breeze. And I knew that it was talking to me and reaffirming that what I was experiencing was real, that when I would wake up and feel something looking at me, it was there. But somehow that dancing and that communication with the flame letting me know that I was okay and that I was safe. And my mom, so my dad was a little softer, he was a little bit more creative. My mom had a little more closed offness, and not necessarily closed off to what I was speaking about, but more avoidant. We're not going to talk about that, you're fine, and it's not real. And so when I was 6.5, my father decided to leave this planet. He made the choice to end his life and leave this dimension. And for me, being that young, when I reflect on those couple weeks of processing, I did not understand. And when we had the funeral and the casket open, I greeted everyone with so much love and excitement, like the opposite. And everyone came in sobbing and crying, obviously, and I held them and just said, everything's fine. And I would bring them to my dad, his open casket, and I would place their hands on his hand, and I would say, just talk to him. He can feel you. He's here. It's okay. And it didn't change until about 2 weeks after he died. My mom was getting me ready for bed, putting on my pajamas, and I I said, when is Daddy coming home? When is he coming home? Because to me, he was never gone. He's not gone. He's not leaving. He went somewhere, right? Like, his body's here. He went somewhere. It's fine. He's not gone. That doesn't make sense. Naturally, my consciousness within this little body, like sitting way back here, is like, this is not. You're sobbing in your sadness. It's real, but it's not, because that's not real. And my mom, that was the first time I'd seen her break. And she said, Daddy's not coming home. And because she believed it so much, I mean, what more can I do but to believe this? And it's so interesting when a heart breaks, because it does something to the room. It's like you feel it. It sends out a ripple, a shatter through the atoms that make up the room. And it feels like a rock that just starts to sink. And it hits, right? And we just sobbed, and she held me, and my nightlight was never the same. The conditioning of this reality of black and white, this is how it is, it ends here and it's done, and he's never coming back. It kind of closed that off for me, this magic, this light of protection. And when that happened, while my mom was holding me, I could almost feel this darkness laughing, right? Menacingly, of how perfect, what perfect situation and alignment that I can feed and grow off of this pain and suffering. How perfect. I can almost hear it clear as day right now. Just this voice. And I begged my mom, I said, please sleep with me. I can't sleep alone. And so she slept with me that night. And, which I loved, because, my mom was a little bit more avoidant with these things. And she slept with me that night, and I remember the sun rising in the room, the morning had come, and my mom was still sleeping, and the energy just shifted in the room. It was like, you feel this space now, it feels mostly neutral, and as if a feather lifted, like as if your body just lifted like a feather, become weightless. That's what it felt like in the room. And my mom had always told me, everything's okay, it's not real, it's fine. And so that's what I was doing under my blanket. And then I felt this ice cold temperature just press on my left shoulder. And now I was like panicking in my little body, my little 6.5-year-old body. And I'm like, I'm okay, everything's fine, it's not real. And I couldn't ignore it. And so eventually I took down the covers and I peeked. And there he was. My dad's hand holding my left shoulder, and I couldn't see the rest of his body, but it was so real. And I screamed, not because I was scared, it was just shocking. I was like, 60, I don't know how to describe these things. And, I woke my mom up with my shriek, and she was like, what? And I said, Dad's here. He's right here. And she had this long talk with me. He's not here. He's not. And she wouldn't sleep with me again. because she wanted me to learn how to self-soothe. I needed to get over this phase. And she put me in therapy. Because when children go through trauma like this, you know, they believe that they have hallucinations. And that only confirmed it more for me. I remember I was so smart, like this guy talking and me being like, you know nothing. You know nothing of death. What you're talking to me about, like, this is not working for me. And my visions at night just got more detailed, just stronger, but I didn't have that light. I kept my night light on, but the protection wasn't there. I remember seeing faces in my princess canopy bed and teeth and just them waiting outside of this barrier of light, like they were just waiting for me. And for a while, all of it just kind of stopped. I'm not sure if the conditioning really set in or what it was, but time seemed to have passed. And I told my mom, I said that my mom was really good about this. I said, I'm not going to this therapist anymore. He's comparing my father's death to a hamster, and that makes no sense to me. My dad is not a hamster. I don't want to go to therapy. And my mom was great. She said, cool, I'm not going to put you through that. That's fine. It's okay. And I think by making that choice for myself, it kind of shut everything off. I still went to bed with my nightlight on, and it took a long time for me to not have sleepless nights, but all of this build-up kind of subsided. And it wasn't until, fast forward, I was 15 years old, and I was sitting with my brother, and my brother's a computer geek, just like my dad. Reminds me a lot of my dad, and the memories I have. And I just randomly asked him, I said, have you ever felt like dad was here, or like there was something else, there was something more, like a shift in the room? Have you ever felt this before? And this was the first time that I didn't feel alone. Because my brother, out of everyone that I knew, he was so technical and computer and smart. And he told me a story. When we were little, my brother would stay up and play video games and stuff, and would get in trouble, right? He's like this 10-year-old kid up till 1, 2 a.m., my dad knocking on the door. And my dad, being a little softer than my mom, you know, he wouldn't really get you in trouble. He would just, okay, go to bed, you know, knocking on the door. And my brother had told me that late at night, and he's like 16 or 17 years old, that when he would stay up till 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, my mom just whatever, he'd be up gaming on a school night. And around 2:30 a.m., a loud knock would come on the door. And he would get up and go look. No one. And he'd go back to playing. And then it would happen again, louder. The 3 knocks. Until he went to bed. This would happen over 30-minute intervals. And my brother had never told me that. And I'm like, what? What? And so I wanted to talk to my dad. I needed to understand. And around, you know, this time during high school, there'd been talk about the Ouija board and all of that. And my best friend, he bought one. And I said, can we please do this? I want to talk to my dad. I want to open whatever space we need to open, and I want to communicate with my dad. And he was like, yes, of course. He loves everything like that. My best friend from high school. And so it was me, my best friend, and one of my other amazing close friends. We planned it this night. My mom was going out on a date. Perfect. We have the space to ourselves. We're going to make this so amazing, and I'm going to be able to talk to my dad. And so I collected some of his things, kind of made like a little altar, and we set up the space. And we had never used it before. We did not know what we were doing. And did the opening prayer, opened it. And I mean, when I tell you, in an instant, this thing started moving without us touching it. It was so fast and so surreal. It was terrifying, honestly. It was like a movie, and maybe even as I'm speaking this, it's hard for people to even understand what that feels like, to see something happening in real time, in real life, the third dimensional eye life. And so my friend that was really into this stuff, he kind of took control. I was so thankful he was there, because I was sobbing. I was sobbing. And he calmed the space down, and he said, start asking questions. So I started asking questions that only my dad would know. That only my dad would know. And he was answering all of it perfectly. And so it came to the moment that I had been waiting for, to ask him the one big question. Why? Why did you do this to me? Why did you do this to my brother and my mom? All of us, my family. And there was a pause. He stopped answering. And I could feel him not knowing what to say. And then that whatever it is, the little tool that moves, started spiraling and started spelling out so fast. I mean, as fast as it could go. This thing was like, it was so wild. Spelling out, leave now, leave now, leave now. And I was panicking, my friends were panicking. The lights in the room started fluttering and flickering. And my friend grabbed that thing because it was moving so fast, and he shoved it to the goodbye. And I said, let's get out of the house. The lights shut off. The lights completely shut off in the room, in the house, actually. And I ran outside, and I remember I was like, I need to call my mom. Oh my gosh, I need to call my mom. And I called her, and she was livid. And for someone that doesn't really believe in this stuff, I mean, she was livid. How dare you bring that into my house? Yeah, what have you done? And she came home, and my friends left, and I realized that I hadn't closed this portal. I didn't know that that's what I was supposed to do. I didn't know. And my mom went to bed. She was angry at me. And I went downstairs to do laundry in the basement. And I was gathering my clothes out. And every hair on my body just stood up. And I went into fight or flight. And I remember saying, it's okay. It's okay, I'm fine. Like, this isn't real. And I did not look. I remembered from childhood that when I looked, things were there. So I did not look. And I gathered my things and I started walking up the stairs. And my body was like, no, like, you need to go. You need to go now. And I tried to ignore it. These were very long stairs. East Coast basement stairs, like, very long. And I walk in, and then eventually, I mean, it's like someone screaming at me through a microphone. Run, now. I just drop my laundry, I run, I slam open the door, I just run through the kitchen, I run. This was kind of a oddly shaped big house. I'm running through the kitchen, and then I make a left down the hall to my room, and I run to my room. And as I go to shut my door, I look around. And this massive, dense, black energy walks out from the kitchen and turns and looks at me. And I just yell. And I close my door. And I wake my mom up. Obviously. And she comes out in a panic. What? And I don't even believe what just happened. I'm so scared and so shook and confused, and I don't want to scare her and hurt her anymore. And so I look at her and I just say, it was a spider. And she goes, we'll go back to sleep. So I close the door and I lay down, and I don't remember anything after that. Everything kind of goes to sleep for a while. The energy sort of subsides. And we move. My mom falls in love, and we move in with him. And there were some things that happened that were alarming. Many stories, small stories in between that I could share, but ultimately it was just more proof that something was following me. Something was there. And so when my mom told me that she was going to move to Florida after she got remarried, and that I needed to figure out where I was going to go and what I was going to do with my life, I kind of was excited, because I was going to leave this state. I was like, get me away from here. Whatever this is, if I leave, then it's done. Then it's gone. It can't follow me, right? Right? And I decided to go to skin school in Massachusetts, and my great aunt and uncle, amazing people that I wasn't super close to, but they had a basement apartment. They had this beautiful house and then its own separate apartment. And they were like, come live with us. You'll have your own space, which was amazing because it felt like my own apartment. And so I moved in there, and I was excited. And I remember my aunt and uncle, they had left the house for the day, and so it was my first day kind of having the whole house to myself. Even though I had the apartment, I could go upstairs as I pleased, and I would all the time because I was still young. I was 17 and a half, and so I wanted to be with people. I wanted to be with my family, and I was getting something out of the fridge, so they weren't home, and this voice just screamed in my ear, "Hi!" And I drop everything. And I'm looking around and I'm like, hello? Auntie? And then I start walking around her house, upstairs, and I'm checking the rooms. I'm like, Auntie? And there's no one there. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So then I close everything up and clean up my mess and go about the rest of my day, not mentioning anything. And so as time goes on in this space, smaller things start to happen, and I start sleeping with the nightlight again. And I can feel the energies kind of change in the room, and my sleep patterns aren't the same. And I keep having this thought in the back of my mind, like, this thing is following me. And I didn't want to believe it. I kind of went back into that conditioning. It's okay, I'm going to ignore it. It's not real. This is not real. It's not. And I came home from work. So this is a little time I graduated school. came back from work, went into my room. I had to pass through my kitchen in the apartment to go to my room. And I placed down my bags. And I come out of my room. And within that less than 2 seconds of me walking through the kitchen and putting my stuff down, I came back out, and every cabinet, every drawer, every thing was open. The fridge wide open, and one of the cabinets still swaying. And I just stood there in shock, almost laughing, actually, because I was so scared, because it's set in. That was the moment that I realized that, no, this is real. and I mean, what more could you do but sit there? And I started to close all the cabinets and the drawers. I could only move forward from that moment. And I didn't tell anybody about this. I didn't speak to my aunt and uncle about it. I didn't want to scare them, and I honestly didn't want anyone to think I was insane. Yeah. So, and time kind of passes. I get an opportunity to move away, and once again, I have the excitement of moving away because I'm like, yay, I can leave this all behind. It's not going to follow me. It can't. And I leave for about 8 months, and this energy, this darkness, this entity, this demon, this energy that I had allowed into my life unconsciously came out in my external world so badly that it forced me to move back to this house 8 months later. My external world had weakened and tore me apart so much that I found myself moving back to this basement apartment at my aunt and uncle's, and I was so grateful because I needed them. And the day I arrived back and I was moving my stuff back into my old space and my old room, the apartment, I could feel that laughter again. And I was scared. I was scared because I didn't really have much to believe in. I feel like a lot of my hope and my light had been taken. And what I had experienced for the 8 months while being away in my physical life, it was pretty much the devil himself in real life. And that nightlight of protection was really just me being able to at least see the torture taking place. And one of my biggest fears, one of them, not anymore, was being attacked in the shower and having someone come in, and if I were to be murdered, being naked in the shower. I don't know why. There's something about that that is so uncomfortable to me. I'd rather be laying in bed with a t-shirt on, if I could choose. As dark as that sounds, but this is how deep, and my mind goes so deep. And so it's no surprise to me that this energy that knows me so well. So one morning I was taking a shower, getting ready for work, and the energy changed in the room. It was that feeling. And instead of feeling like a feather and light, like when my dad had placed his hand on my shoulder, it felt like a rock. It felt like I sunk. And I was like, oh no. Started talking to myself in the shower. I'm not looking. No, I'm in the shower. No. And I couldn't ignore it. It just like on the stairs, I couldn't ignore it. And so I ripped the shower curtain open, and there's nothing. So I'm like, okay. So I go back to taking my shower, 20 seconds later, all the lights shut off. And the soap pours into my eyes and it's burning. And I scream and I rip myself out of the shower. I can't see. It's a basement apartment, so when the lights shut off, I mean, you can't see anything. And at 5 a.m. on a winter morning in the East Coast, I mean, it's good luck. And I run out of the bathroom, and only thing I can think of is go to the door that leads up to my aunt and uncle's house upstairs, and I'm locked. I'm standing there, dripping naked, trying to open the door, and it's completely locked. Panicking in the dark, and my heart is beating, and I'm screaming, and I'm pounding on the door. Uncle, 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 screaming for my uncle. And he comes flooding down the stairs once he hears me, and the door just glides open with ease. With ease. And I mean, I had full body weight of fear, just like trying to pull myself out as if you were slipping down a well and feeling the mud enter your nails, and you're falling and you're trying to lift yourself out of this well, but you're just falling. And that's what it felt like. And I was just everything I had. And he just opened it. And so I'm sitting there getting water all over the floor. And he's like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And I'm like, yeah, I was locked in. I don't know. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. And so he, all right, looking at me like I was crazy. And he was probably thinking, like, these kids, like, what is she doing? What is she doing? Probably smoking weed. And he left, and I realized that this thing, it knew what I was afraid of. And it knew how to get me. Even more than I was already feeling, right? And about 3 days later, I was going to bed. And just like every other night, turning on my nightlight. And at this point, I'm 21. I'm still sleeping with a nightlight. Turning on my nightlight, and the energy feels different. It doesn't feel like a rock. It doesn't feel like a feather. It feels calm. Like the eye before the eye of the storm. The calm before the storm. And it felt peaceful and like a sigh of relief almost. And so I went to bed feeling okay. And I was having this dream. It was not a good dream. It was dark. And it was, you know how you have a dream and the dream is in your space. Everything's the same. And I looked down over my bed, and there's this creature just rocking and smiling, this huge smile, but like evil, snickering, like a little troll. And in the dream, I'm like, what? What's this creature? And so I wake up. And in the dream that I was having a few moments before I woke up, my nightlight was off. And when I woke up, my nightlight was off, and I couldn't move. I legitimately could not move. My body was totally paralyzed. And I could move my eyes, and I kept trying to move because I was awake. And I kept thinking, something's wrong with me. I've had a stroke and I can't move, and I'm trying to yell and my mouth can't move, so it's coming out like soft whimpers. And I'm pulling myself. I'm pulling and I'm straining, and I can feel the veins in my neck popping, and I'm sweating. And there's just this 20 minutes of panic and trying to pull myself out of this well of darkness and fear. And then I feel a hand, and not a nice hand, a large pressure grip grab my right foot. And I stop breathing. Because now I think that I've been drugged and someone has been in my room and they are going to murder me. I'm going to be murdered now. And then I feel the other hand on my left foot. And it's gripping me and it hurts. And it's so slow. Oh, so slow, like it just loves this sipping of my anxiety and my fear. It's just drinking my sweat. And then it raises its whatever it is and grabs my thigh. And it's slowly crawling up my body, like so slow. And I'm not breathing still. And I'm just can't move still. I'm straining. And then when it reaches my hips, I feel my breath come back, and I'm giving it all I have. I'm screaming, and I can hear my whimpers, and they're loud, but they're not as loud as I want them to be. And I'm screaming and screaming because my aunt's bedroom is above my bedroom. And I'm like, if she could only just hear me, if she could only just hear me. And then it crawls up the rest of my body. And its hand goes on my throat, and my throat gets shoved down into the bed. I mean, the amount of weight and pressure, I could feel the sides of the mattress hug up over my body. And then the other on my forehead and my eyes and my face, and pushing me down into the pillow. And I literally could not breathe anymore. And as I was being suffocated, that stillness, that calmness was back. It's like I was being suffocated and in so much fear, and then this energy of calm entered. And then this voice, like the depths of hell. If you could just think of like the lowest, scariest, most hair-standing voice that you could think of, leaned over into my ear calmly and said, I don't want you to move. I don't want you to move. And I realized in that moment that this thing, this energy had not only taken over my mind, my spirit, and now my physical body. It literally could control my physical body. And after it spoke that in my ear, it let me go. And I sat up, sweat pouring, just, was that a dream? And I look over to my nightlight, and it's off. And I knew, because I went to bed every night with that on, that it was real. And I got up and I turned on the lights and I looked at my throat in the mirror, and I had marks on my throat. And you would think at this point that I'd be so scared that I would run up and wake up my aunt and uncle, but it was weird. I saw the marks on my throat and I became calm. It was like everything that I had been afraid of had happened. This thing now could control all aspects of me, which is arguably, that's probably the scariest thing. Something being able to control all of you. And probably half in shock and half not being afraid anymore because it had taken everything from me, I just climbed back into bed and I shut off the nightlight. Or it was already off, but I shut off my lights. And I went to sleep and I slept great. And I woke up the next morning and I went upstairs to have coffee with my aunt and uncle. And my uncle had left early to go to work, and so it was just my aunt and I said, for the first time, I opened my voice and I said, "Auntie, something really strange happened to me last night. And I'm gonna tell you, and I don't want it to freak you out, but I'm a little concerned." I tried to keep it as light as possible. And I told her I woke up and I couldn't move my body. And I told her what happened. And she looked at me and she looked confused at first, but then I realized she was actually in disbelief, because last night, she said, you came into my room and you kissed me on my forehead and you sat down at the bottom of the bed and you said, "I'm okay, Auntie. Don't worry about me. Don't come check on me. I'm okay. I love you." And she was half awake, half asleep, so she thought she was dreaming, but she found it very odd that I had come upstairs to tell her that. And after that moment of her and I staring at each other over the kitchen table, of shock, but also, wow, how dark, how manipulating, how crazy this, and it wasn't even a shock to me. I was like, how intelligent this thing to pretend to be me. And I was pissed. Now I was angry. I was so mad. I was ready. I'm done. Whatever this is, I'm done. I'm ready. I went downstairs and I yelled, "Get out of my space. You're not welcome here. Stop following me. Come out. Come out. Show yourself. I'm ready." And weeks went by and it never came back. It never came back. And I realized that the moment that I was ready, the moment that I was no longer afraid, I realized that this thing was me.
Wow.
And just like numbers 1 through 10, we have to count 1, 2, 3, 4 to get to 10. That this fear, this darkness of being unworthy, of being unseen, of being afraid of the unknown, of everything that took away my belief system of these other worlds and magic and nothing being good or bad, just things being. that this energy was on level 2 and my energy was level 10. But I had allowed myself to enter level 2 unknowingly. And this thing grew and fed off that level 2 within my body. And it became real because I allowed it to become real. And this light that I so pleaded for externally within my nightlight, within the people that were around me, was me. My dad being this source and inspiration of light, was always me. And that's how it ended. It was a massive awakening of reopening my consciousness to the spirit realm and all the frequencies that exist out there, whether they're good or bad, they just are, and they are us. And when we allow ourselves to go back to level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, whatever exists within that plane will meet you. And it allowed me to see, no wonder it knew everything that I was afraid of. Of course. It was me. Of course. I'm intelligent. I can be extremely manipulative. Yes, this is me. And my darkness loved that because it just wanted attention. It just wanted to be seen. It wanted to be noticed. And I ignored it for so long because I was told that that was what we do. And when we see shadow, we see it every day. We see our shadow in people, experiences. We see our light in people and experiences. And we have a choice. When we fall down through the well, which I did, I fell down to the bottom, trying to scrape myself back up. And I saw the light. That light came back on. And then it was my choice with what I wanted to do with it. And I was no longer afraid. And being a human, experiences happen every day, all the time, and working so closely with people and energy, I experience these lower frequencies all the time. And instead of being afraid, I simply remember this energy, this darkness comes in, and I go, oh, yes, I've experienced you before. Yes, I see you. But that does not mean that your level 2 can exist in my level 10. And so you will stay at level 2 and I will stay at level 10. And it's like a dial of a radio station. You just switch it. And it's that simple. Because it's very real. It's very real. But level 2 simply, just with science, it cannot exist in level 10. It doesn't work that way. You can go backwards. You can go to level 2. And you can be there as a level 10, and you can take knowledge back up. But level 2 can't reach level 10. And that's why when it sees you hit level 2 or 3, it's like, oh, yes, please come with me. Come here. Oh, because I can't reach you up there, but I can reach you here. And this is exactly what I've been looking for. So the reawakening and the reopening of this consciousness, this thread of consciousness. And I believe we all have this, and this is how it expressed itself through me to find my light. Because when my dad died, that was my inner flame. That was my nightlight. And I do believe part of me signing up for that experience was finding my power. and as bright and as light that I am, as dark and as deep as I am. And there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of appreciation and beauty in that. So.
Gorgeous. Absolutely riveting. I was riveted through the whole thing. I went through all the emotions with you. Unreal. That's so magical. And that realization, how you put the level 10 and level 2, it's so real. People ask me all the time, like, if I do house clearings or something like, or energy clearings, like, aren't you afraid? And I'm like, no, they can't touch me. I'm up here in this dimension and they're there. I can clear them. And the best way to do is send them love, because you see that as an extension of yourself, or that fear or shame and blame and those energies, those lower frequencies on that map of consciousness. It allows those energies to grow. But if you send that energy love, that's the last thing that energy wants. And so then it just starts to dissipate. So I love that realization with that, and that profound energy when you're like, oh, that's me. Like, was it like a light bulb that went off, or how did you realize that?
I think it was after that big, most fearful thing happened to my physical body, and it working through other people, when I waited for it and would even sleep with the nightlight off on purpose from that point on, to try to entice it out, because I had this belief system, as long as I had the light, it would stay outside of the barrier of the light. And so I slept with the nightlight off. It never came back. And I think that feeling of calm actually was the meeting of my two halves. That middle ground of union. And so it took time for me to feel that, but I think it was the fact that I did not have fear anymore, that I was not afraid and I was ready, and that's not what it feeds off of.
Yeah.
It feeds off of the energy that I give it to be an entity.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. It's amazing how, as a child, how conscious you were with your dad's death and understanding before people put their conditioning on, but also how you held space for all the adults around and protected the adults. Isn't that wild that children do that?
It is so wild. It is so wild. I think some people would hear that and say, well, she's 6.5, she does not understand what death is, and so it's a kind of a detachment, like the stages of grief haven't sat in, a denial, I suppose. And maybe that is partially true, I'm not sure, but I know it from my point of view and reflecting on that day. It was just if I was sitting in a movie theater watching the screen and I knew something that no one else knew, and everybody does know it. I think life and their own conditioning just puts them in a box, and so the amount of pain and suffering that you feel, and it's real, but it's not the truth. Yeah, and I've met, children are extraordinary. We hold this imagination, and the veil is so thin. Our consciousness is still so open from where we came from. And yeah, I couldn't understand. I understood why everyone was so upset, but I was trying so hard to just reassure them. He can feel you. Like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And even I remember sitting down and being able to talk to him myself before the service was over. And I still didn't cry. I just remember like touching his skin and it feeling weird and different because it wasn't full of life. But I remember thinking, that's not my dad. That's not him. This is not his body. And that's why it feels weird, and that's okay. He's just not here right now. So
Wow. I love that you brought up the imagination and how the veil is so thin for children, because I was just thinking that with that, especially watching the horror movies or the scary movies, because that imagination is so intense and the veil is so thin and we're so open to our multidimensionality. When you were telling me the story of that, it reminded me of my parents went to see Amityville Horror when I was 7 at the drive-in theater, and I was in the back seat, and they're just like to my brother and I, go to sleep, we're gonna watch this movie, you guys just go to sleep. And I remember peeking around the side of, my dad was sitting in the passenger seat, and I was like peeking around watching. It must have been my stepdad. And I was watching it, and it was so scary that for years I would see the red eyes. For years I would feel energy in my bedroom. I was terrified all the time for about probably 3 or 4 years that I felt the energy in my room from that movie. And since then I've not watched horror movies. I just don't, because I do have an intense imagination, and your imagination is your gateway to creation. And so letting that energy in amplifies it. So I know some people love it and they love horror movies, but for me, I'm like, not for me, because it does let that energy in. And that's just crazy. There's also the Ouija board. Like, I was just like, holy cow. That thing, that's no joke either. I played with it once when I was probably 17 too. Like, we were at a party in someone's backyard, and this is the coolest story, is it starts moving and I'm watching, and this kid, this like 4-year-old kid, comes through the veil and starts talking to me. And he had brown hair and big brown eyes. I could see his face. I could see what he looked like. And he's telling me all these things. And I got really scared. And I was like, oh my God, we've got to go. Like the same thing. Like, we've got to go. I'm driving home. It's like snowy. It's in Salt Lake. Isn't that where you are right now? Yeah, it's in Salt Lake City. I'm driving up Creek Road. It's just snowing and I'm going so slow. My friends are like, go faster. And I'm like, I'm too scared to drive faster. But years later, when I was 24, when my son was born, I lived in Phoenix, and I thought, maybe we should go to church. I've got a child now. Maybe I need to go back to the Catholic Church and have some kind of foundation for him. We baptized him in there. So I took him to Sunday Mass one day, and I was sitting there and I felt somebody staring at my back. And I turned around, and there's this 4 or 5-year-old kid, and he goes, do you remember me? And I was like, oh my God. It was so wild. And he was a real kid, and he was with his real mom, but somehow that timeline had like crossed over, and he had come through 7 years prior, and then just, oh, it was wild. So cool. But it's just, I don't recommend that either.
yeah,
Playing with the Ouija board, like,
no.
you don't know what you're bringing in, you don't know what's going on, and if you don't know how to handle the energy, I wouldn't. I remember years ago my friends were like on a girl vacation, and they texted me, should we play with the Ouija board? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Do not bring that out. Go play some other game.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah.
It is not to be
No.
messed with.
No.
Not at all.
No. Your story was so amazing, but I also truly believe, one, I loved how you said that, as Neville Goddard says, everything in this world is your subconscious mind pushed out, and understanding the light and the dark is all energies pushed out of your own subconscious mind, and we get what we're focused on, or our emotions, our intentions. But also, I always think that the dark serves the light. Like, that dark energy is the catalyst that leads you to being a profound healer, or being able to hold space as you're healing people. Like, I'm like, nothing scares me. You can throw anything at me, because I've faced the devil himself, and you're not going to scare me. And so I love that. How did your healing gifts and your psychic gifts amplify, and when did you let the dragons and the fairies back in?
It started when I actually was introduced to Reiki. And I had my Reiki attunements, and it was gifted to me, which was amazing. I feel like just as much as I've had this darker story. I've had so much light in between, and I do consider my father a guardian angel. Like, there was many moments that I didn't share within that story of seeing white feathers and certain things, like him coming to me in dreams and letting me know that he was there. And so, yeah, when I got my Reiki attunement, that's when this perception of seeing this situation for the truth of what it really was sat in. And as dark as I could go, as light as I can go. And I loved that philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that reflection, that mirroring within myself. And so instead of focusing on my fear, which I had done for so long, I started to focus on my joy and my excitement and my love. And, the rainbows start pouring in, and now all types of energies come in, and both good or bad. And they just are. And just seeing them, and instead of ignoring it, I think it comes with that change of perception of, oh, like, I give you awareness, and I give you love, I give you attention, I give you what you're wanting, but just not in the way that to feed you and give you your own power over me, because you are me. So that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and so just a slow process over the years of me trusting that light. When I initially had that realization and that thought, of me then putting it to the test, right? Because we have like these epiphanies, but that doesn't mean our life is changed forever. We're still humans. Yeah. We're still humans, and we're constantly being tested. And I mean, even still to this day, I get tested by my shadow all the time, and other people's shadows that are a reflection of mine, and where we meet at that level. And yeah, I just choose what I hone in on, and I am given the choice when I see both the shadow and the dark, and I know that no matter which I choose, I can come back here, and it's all good. It's all a part of me, and so I can walk through that without any fear. I don't feel like they can touch me. But yeah, so the more I allow myself to see the depths of someone's shadow, and the more that I give it love, the more that I receive back in the opposite direction.
Yeah. With
angels and my dad, and unicorns, love unicorns, fairies, and it's definitely dragons. I see a lot of dragons, and it's different all the time. And definitely people's passed on loved ones, they're a part of that too, and they like to come in sometimes, and I just allow it to be.
Yeah.
There's something that I just allow instead of trying to force, and come back to that calm space that I referenced to, of the joining of both of my halves, my darkest shadow, my demon self, and my highest light, my angelic self. And when I meet, there's this balance, there's this calm, and then everything starts to come in from that point on. And I allow it like a show, like a movie. So
I love that. I love that so much. And it's so interesting. When I talk to my daughter about her dad, a lot of times he drops in and looks through my eyes, and I can see him looking at her, and I get very emotional. When you were talking about him at one point, your dad dropped in my body, and I was looking at you through his eyes, and I just teared up, and he was so proud of you, like the pride that was beaming. I didn't want to interrupt your story, but I was like, oh, there's a whole thing going on over here. So it was really beautiful, and he's got such beautiful energy, and so mad. I know we've met him before in sessions and whatnot, but it's just so beautiful, and the profound love he feels. I don't know if I've experienced that with anyone but my daughter, like that intense as what happened today, which I love that he was here with you and just beaming of pride of how you've used this experience to come into your light work and the beautiful person you are. And our last question would be, one, I know a lot of people are going to get a lot of help from this because I do know people that experience these shadow creatures at the end of their bed, or people coming in, or dark energies coming in, and they don't know how to handle that. What advice would you give someone experiencing that doesn't quite yet know their power or that it's them? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I suppose that's a hard question if you feel so afraid, because in the moments that I was feeling fear, I'm not sure. Um, I suppose when we have something that we fall back to, like my nightlight, and when my dad was still physically there, giving me curiosity, right? Because he forced me to watch something over and over again, even though I was so afraid, trying to show me that not all that I'm feeling is necessarily the truth. And so try to calm yourself down and enter a space of curiosity. Mm-hmm. Instead of allowing your fear to be this tie that pulls you in closer. Oh, who are you? Why are you here? Asking questions. Becoming back to innocence of this thing is love. That is all that there is. All that we are one energy. So this thing is me. I'm sharing space with this thing, even though we're on different steps. But for somehow my body, I've linked up. I have an open wound that it reaches me through. And so having curiosity, just like you would want to be there for yourself if you had the awareness that it was you suffering. And so when we meet these other frequencies, it is a frequency within yourself. So I would also say working more internally. Where do I feel it in my body? Where am I feeling the fear when I share space with this creature, this entity? Where is it coming up? For me, it was all in here, my chest and my breath. And so my heart, my heart had shattered, and my confidence, my security, my solar plexus had just plummeted. And that's where the sensations would rise from, just this heat of anxiety. So where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your bones? Like, where do you feel it? And giving yourself, I would even say holding yourself. You can hug yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hug yourself in that moment. If you're very visual and you're seeing it, still asking it questions and just saying, I love you. I'm here for you. What do you want to tell me? What do you want to share with me? And I do also believe that these things happen for a reason. So just like you were saying, the catalyst, these things are coming to you for a reason. This thing is happening to you for a reason. So we don't necessarily want to push it away, because it's there to help you grow. And so I don't necessarily like banishing, because we don't want to banish. That's how it got bigger. That's how it got bigger. That's how we gave it energy, by banishing it. And it's more of just almost like I said, a dial of a frequency, a change of perception. I'm going to dial up a little higher here. I'm going to meet you. I see you because I'm on level 10. So I can, for sure, I'm at level 10. So I can look down the stairs. I can look down to step number 2. Step number 2 is how I got here. So I love step number 2. But that doesn't mean I'm going to hang out in step 2. And step 2 is going to come up and hang out with me in step 10. That's not what's going to happen. I see you. I love you. What do you need right now?
Gorgeous.
And so I think it's just falling into that place of calm curiosity and knowing that if you don't do that, then you are giving it power to become outside of you. You are giving it control to control you, because that's how powerful you are.
Yeah.
And when you take that back, when you take that perception back, you're unstoppable.
I fully agree with you. And it is this, like, when you're like, just love yourself, this self love, because it is that self loathing too that lets
Mm-hmm.
that energy grow. And so the more you love yourself open, and I think it also, there's a varying energy 90% that time. But for me, because my boundaries were so permeable and malleable, I remember the last time I was attacked was this entity energy came through my window, and it looked like a kind of a Chinese dragon, smoky, misty, gray brown energy came in the middle of the night. And I opened my eyes and I saw it. And for me, the moment of transcendent was me creating boundaries and saying, I sat up and I said, absolutely not. And this light went shooting up, and then I blasted it with love, and then it got about this big and went do and left. And that was the last moment, because I think for me it was standing up in my sovereignty and saying, no, I'm not going to let everything come into my field while I love myself and send the energy love back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's perfect too. Hmm.
I think it's just finding, but I most of the time it is that self love and meeting with curiosity. But for those of us sometimes that are lacking boundaries, that's the lesson,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love that.
so much. This has been unreal and unbelievable and magical, and I can't wait to share this story. I'm so grateful for you, and yeah,
Mm.
have a beautiful, lovely trip back to LA, and I will see you very soon.
Yes, thank you so
Thank,
much for having me
thank
on
you.
and letting me share a story that's a little different than.
Yes.
And I'm all about the rainbows and unicorns and fairies. Everybody knows that about me. So it's very cool to be able to share this other aspect of me, that honestly no one really knows about.
Oh, well, thank you for
So,
trusting me to
yeah.
share it. And, we can't have the light without the dark.
Yeah. And I think most people are afraid of it.
Yeah.
And so this is so healing for me to be able to
Mm.
share and just reach the right people that need it at the right time, and just knowing that this is a part of your consciousness that was put to sleep and it's just waking up, and that's all that it is, and you already knew all of this before you were conditioned. And so
Mm.
it's a very powerful magical thing, and it's a blessing. So thank you so much, and thank you for mentioning my dad.
Amen. Oh, amen. Thank you for watching Beyond the Veil. Please like, subscribe, and share so we can grow our channel. If you have a story you would like to share, please email nandipresents@gmail.com. If you're interested in classes or personal sessions, please visit nandi.co, Nandi.co, and have a magical day.